Could
I
you talk
think
about
broadly
that?
speaking, it's the
Yeah.
same thing, but there were a couple of subplots that we pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple of scenes that we pulled out, a couple of other subplots that we expanded on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was a lot of tinkering, and then also just the basic familiarity, explaining who is who and what is what, and taking out the. So there were, I mean, it was 2 years, right? So it's hard for me to track, and I haven't, gone back to either version and read it. I've been.
Right.
So it'll be interesting how the comparison works. But I
Right.
think, Seven Moons will become the definitive text. I guess it's coming out in paperback in India. So, like with Chinaman, the brief was if someone knows nothing about cricket, they should still be able to follow the story. So
Absolutely.
that's quite challenging. So that's why in Chinaman there are little, short chapters that explain the basics of cricket and so on. So a similar brief for this, it was if someone knows nothing about the LTTE, can they understand this book? And so let's make it like that.
Right.
So yeah, there was that. There were just, I think, incidents that. Also, we looked at there's quite a gruesome scene in Chats with the Dead. When you're given something to tinker with for so long, something
Yeah.
with so many layers to it, right? So there's a
Right.
murder mystery, there's a character study, there's a political satire, then there's world building with the ghosts. So many layers.
Mm.
It's like, having a film that you've shot and you have the editing room for,
Yeah.
2 years with all the special effects and all that. So you play with it. Well, I think the premise there, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, but I think the premise of it was what if Sri Lanka's dead could speak? What kind of story would they tell? And the dead, there's been dead from the tsunami, dead from the Easter attacks, from the last phase of the war. So, I had my choice of period that I could execute that premise in. But when I went to 89, because I remember living through it, as a teenager, and I remember how, and looking back at the historical records, I mean, we've had 83, we've had 71, we not short of massacres in this country. I mean, not like not unlike India, right? We are South Asia, we have that past. But just 89, I just was fascinated with just the different factions there, and if a body turns up, you didn't know who. Now today, if a body turns up, you have a fair idea who it might be. Then you had no idea, was this did the government do this? Did the cops do it? Did the JVP do this? So for me, that was the premise was, okay, if the dead could speak, what if I could get a dead JVP, a dead moderate Tamil? So that, these characters are all based on, so Richard de Soisa is loosely, Almeida evolved from him, sort of this Colombo, Seven, socialite, closet gay, but also a political activist who, I mean, Richard de Soisa's death shocked Colombo because it was one of us, Usually when someone gets killed, it's a poor Tamil kid in Jaffna or a soldier, but, one of us was taken, abducted and killed. Then there was Rajini Thiranagama, who was a Tamil moderate in Jaffna, who was assassinated by the LTTE. So Dr. Rani in the text is her, and I mean, based on, it evolved to something else. And the other one was a JVP activist called Daya Pathirana, who was one of the first killings. So what if these characters were in the afterlife? What would they talk about? So every ghost there is based on some, when I was reading through the records, you find, some murder occurred, and I'd kind of resurrect those, some assassination. So that's really how I came to this story, just assemble this cast of ghosts, and then, but of course, yeah, Maali's journey is the central idea. I mean, Richard de Soisa, I don't know if, think about all these assassinations. I don't know if anyone goes to jail or anyone gets prosecuted for these assassinations. There's investigations which are open, closed, suspects disappear, and yeah, none of these murders are solved. And that's why, so Sri Lanka's ghosts, it's also, metaphorically, we have plenty of ghosts from all our conflicts, which haven't really been put to rest. And so this idea of a ghost was quite an obvious metaphor for the fact of not dealing with our past. Yeah, so I think one thing is Sri Lanka has that in our national character, right? We have that immediately during the recent Aragalaya, during this whole presidential fiasco, the memes, the jokes, even the petrol queues, you walk down the petrol queues,
Right.
there's people are playing cards, people are making fun of the government. I mean, there's tensions rise, but it seems like even though we've had a lot to be kind of, upset about, there is this tendency, the Sri Lankan smile, to kind of make a joke about it. I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing, but it just seems to be what is our national character. I think maybe that's the way I naturally write as well, because otherwise you write about all the grim stuff. It becomes quite a depressing commentary. So you temper it with a bit of glib humor. And yeah, but I feel, maybe that's the style I've developed. So the second person made sense because I was thinking, okay, essentially, usually when you're describing a character, you describe what they look like and put them in a situation. But this was like a disembodied voice who's watching their body being dismembered and so on. So the idea that after you die in this mythology, what is it that survives? If your body is cremated or whatever, what is it that survives? And I figured it's probably the voice that's in your head is the thing that survives. So I just tried it, and usually, I had like 30 pages very quickly, and that's usually a sign that the voice is working, or at least that it feels real. So, but that was it. So it's his, because otherwise, how do you narrate it? If you do it in the third person, I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done, anything can be done, but this just seemed natural. Or the first person would have been like a ghost accounting its experiences. So this seemed like, okay, this is what survives the death, is the voice in your head. Maybe that's your soul or your mind or whatever. And so that's why the second person, I mean, it was a challenge, and I hope it's not a challenge to read, because I did work hard on making it flow that you stop noticing it after a while and you're just taken in by the narrative. But I think it's a stylistic choice, which I think felt real, and that's why we did it. The light is something that's common in, you get it in near-death experiences, clinical studies. They describe walking into the light. It's there in the Judeo-Christian philosophy, and I've seen it in Eastern mythology. So the light was a convenient thing. So you have 7 days to walk into the light. So what's in between? Sri Lanka, anything is, you want to get a passport, you want to get a driver's license, you want to get a land registered. It's this, we were all familiar with this bureaucracy and this visa office thing. So I thought, what if it suited my kind of absurd sensibility that, okay, what if the afterlife was like this? Right. So you have the 7 days to get all your forms filled, get your papers signed and submitted, and then you can go into the light. And it also made sense that a lot of people fall through the cracks of the system and end up causing havoc. So it just seemed like a nice idea to explain Sri Lanka's rotten luck, or the fact that some people think it's cursed, that we go through from tragedy to tragedy. Perhaps it's all these unprocessed souls.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more interesting updates.